from what you guys are seeing, does it seem like Luka is unhappy, and does it seem like Lakers fans are unhappy with Luka?
I'll just say 3 words. Nico was right.
Oh
Um,
no.
I,
Oh
I think
no.
the thing you can fault him on is the return that he got. But I think this Luca is what you get. I just don't see it as a thing for him.
Really?
I
So
I just
you're ready.
I think that this is what the Lakers are going to be unless they can build a really strong team around him that makes up for all his deficiencies. This is the Lakers' future, and it's not really that bright.
So deficiencies being like the defensive side of the ball, which certainly there's big lack of effort top down on that roster, but then also like attitude and chemistry that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, Tim Kitzer with you, the voice of NBA Jam. From top journalists and authors to rising influencers and insiders, Hoopsology brings you the voices driving basketball forward. With elite guests and sharp analysis, Matt, Justin, and Alan keep you plugged into everything hoops. From downtown, boom shakalaka.
Approach, but there's no shortage of things to discuss. We'll talk about maybe a potential big impact on the Eastern Conference that's coming up. A little bit more tanking talk, fair or foul. A little bit, is this news or is this noise on a certain topic going around in LA? We'll take a little temperature check on the MVP race, and then we are overdue to react to the KD situation. So I want to be sure to get all your guys' thoughts on that. Before we dive in, I do want to thank all the new listeners, subscribers, and of course the many of you who have been with us for years at this point. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We always appreciate any comments that you guys have on our show. Liking the episode, sharing the episode helps us out a great deal. So help us boost the algorithm some more and get some sensible, high-level sports conversation out there on the algorithm. Appreciate it very much. And before we move into the topics, last order of business, we have sponsorship information here. And Justin, you've got some more for us.
Yeah, just got some info on our new sponsor for this episode, You Perfect. Perfect for any gamers out there looking to upgrade their setup, particularly if you're, on the go in a hotel room, office, etc. You have a Switch or a handheld console. Their portable monitors are pretty cool. High performance, crisp visuals, smooth refresh rates, and easy to plug in viability. Just check out yourperfect.com for more information on all their monitors. Pretty cool, pretty affordable prices if you're in the market for one. They range from all different kind of price points, but especially for productivity, if you're trying to have a multi-monitor set at home, you want to replicate that in the office and also get a little gaming in. It's a perfect fit. So no pun intended. Yourperfect.com if you want to check more information.
Sounds pretty dang perfect for 2026. So definitely check that out. And thank you to You Perfect for sponsoring Hoopsology. So guys, without further ado, let's jump into this. We've always got a lot to discuss and a lot of thoughts on what we discuss. So I want to take a look right now, and we can talk about the Eastern Conference at large, but with the news that's really, for months now, it's kind of been this like object in the distance, and now it's here that after all this time, it appears that Jayson Tatum is going to be suiting up for the Boston Celtics. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the Eastern Conference, and if Tatum is able to return, let's say he's able to give the Celtics like 25 to 30 minutes a night, something like that, as he starts increasing his workload, how the Celtics factor in, and if you guys consider them a contender. And Justin, why don't we start with you for this topic?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see how this season has unfolded, because ever since Tatum and Brown have gotten together, what has been the overall narrative, right? Can these two play together? Can they coexist? Do they get along? I always find it to be kind of manufactured. I guess you live in Boston. I don't think there's any really hard evidence that these guys hate each other. But, people get their wish in terms of seeing, hey, what happens when, one of these guys have the control of the ship for a long time and you see the results. People wrote off Boston. We did during our season preview, and a lot of writers did. I mean, they picked them as like the 8th seed. And you take a look, they're the second best team in the East. 41-20 right now as we're talking. So I think with Brown Jayson Tatum added back into the lineup, the standard protocol is going to happen. Take some games to get acclimated, headed towards this push. But if they're clicking on, all cylinders here, even with Detroit being the number 1 seed, they are unproven compared to the Celtics that have 2 battle-tested superstars that have been through everything. And really the teams on the bottom, I don't really buy them, the Knicks, Cavaliers, Raptors, 76ers, Magic, and Heat, being better in a 7-game series. Can anything happen? I suppose. But I think with Jayson Tatum back, they're going to be a very formidable threat in the East. And I think, all conventional wisdom says they're going to be the favorites to make it out of that conference.
Interesting. Alan, how are you feeling about potential Jayson Tatum return?
Yeah, I kind of think it's gravy at this point. Celtics are playing really well. Now, will that translate into postseason success? Teams that have these kind of injury issues or have lost a major player can have really good regular season success, like the Nuggets post Carmelo Anthony trade, right? But if you don't have that guy in the playoffs, that's where it hurts. So I think if they bring him along really well, I don't know that he helps a lot, or I don't know if he moves the needle for the regular season, but in the postseason, he absolutely 100% helps them get to where they want to go. If he's healthy and able to give them, I think 25 to 30 is probably I think that's a lot. I think 20 to 25 is more where I would see him landing eventually. But we also know that he's a workhorse and that he will play and play and play until he can play no more. So they've got to make sure that they keep an eye on his minutes. I think the Celtics are already contenders, but I think his return puts them pretty squarely right up there with Detroit. And then you've got don't sleep on the Cavs, who have been awesome since the Harden trade. It looks like James Harden's going to keep his streak alive. For all the listeners out there, I like to remind people, James Harden has never missed the playoffs. Now, he's, I know his playoff performance has been iffy, but he has never missed the playoffs. So I wouldn't sleep on those other teams, but I think the Celtics with a healthy Tatum, vault right to the top, up there with Detroit, for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of unique because with Tatum returning, this is a team that, yes, it's different from last year, but in a lot of ways, even with all the trades and moves that they've made, a lot of the pieces had that great chemistry established with Tatum. And certainly their most important piece right now, Brown, has that established with Tatum. So maybe that eases some of the worries about, a lineup change and fitting him back into the rotations, since aside from the majority of this season, he's always been a constant presence on this team. So I'm very curious to see. And Justin, I would definitely emphasize a point that you made that I feel pretty strongly about, in the fact that the Pistons being at the top of the conference, but they're unproven to this point in the playoffs. They have a really big mountain to climb, and even like the loaded OKC team, in 2024 they lost to Dallas on their way, made it all the way to that Western Conference Finals. But you kind of have like this learning curve as a team, and to me, it doesn't feel like a year that Detroit is going instantly to the finals. I could definitely be proven wrong. They've been amazing, and they are that top seed. But usually you have like a stumbling block along the way, and maybe that is going to be the Celtics this year. I want to bring this up real quick too, and I know it's not on our rundown, but I just want to get 30 seconds to a minute, your guys' thoughts on the Knicks right now, because they were at the start of the season, at least, Justin, when you and I were predicting the Eastern Conference, we gave a lot of love to the Knicks and kind of were talking about how we were hoping for them to go far, be a factor. Alan, I'll start with you this time, but where's your confidence level with the Knicks, and do you still see them on that contender level among these Eastern Conference teams?
It's all about consistency. You watch them one night and they look like world beaters and like they can beat anyone. And then you watch them another night against a mid-tier or a bad team and they look like garbage. And it's got to be so frustrating to be a player, and it's got to be so frustrating to be coaching that team because they lack consistency. And that will kill them in the playoffs. If they can't consistently defend, they can't consistently score, they aren't going to consistently win.
Yeah, well said. Justin, how are you feeling about the Knicks right now?
Yeah, I concur. And I mean, it really, even though I like the guy, I mean, it comes down to Karl Anthony Towns. I think they make or break with him. And from what I heard, when they're facing the Spurs, I think he's having career lows in a lot of key categories. So it's really up to him in terms of how he acclimates to this whole Mike Brown paradigm shift, and it seems like he's been the player most affected by it. So I agree with Alan. I mean, they can't get they can't get by on their talent. They're going to lose. I mean, they have to play supreme basketball in order to achieve the objectives that they want. They're not a team that's just going to get by on talent. They have to play well every night. And I just don't see them superiorly better than really any team within the playoff rankings, either in the West or East. So I agree completely with Alan. I just think, they need to be consistent. And I think at this point, there's going to be some questions with the players. I mean, a coaching change, a controversial one, and if they're a disappointment, I mean, how many coaches can you have in there? I mean, at some point, you got to start blaming the players.
I think it's interesting. I wanted to touch on something you just said real quick, Justin, and that was the Karl Anthony Towns under Mike Brown. I mean, you would have thought that would be a match made in heaven after what Mike Brown did with Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento. They have similar skill sets. I would say Karl Anthony Towns is probably better at a lot of those things than Domantas is, and yet it just hasn't clicked.
Yeah, definitely. I think New York fans pretty cautious, pretty worried at the moment. Maybe is a better way to put it. Maybe not quite hitting the panic button just yet because we have some more regular season to go, and you never know. You might get good matchups in the playoffs, and that paves the way. But it is a little tough. It feels like the Celtics normally have the Knicks number. I could also see a situation where the Pistons are able to just kind of out-hustle, out-effort the Knicks in a playoff series, which I might not have felt that way under Tom Thibodeau. I'm not sure about this year's Knicks team in that scenario. So, yeah, you got to imagine there will be a lot of questions about whether it was the right move to release Coach Thibodeau, and then also, as you mentioned, Alan, like that core group of players too, they've put all their chips in now on what they have. So you're going to maybe like a long-term rebuild if this situation isn't. I think bar none, they kind of need to make the Eastern Conference Finals like they did last season. But really, you can sense there's going to be a lot of disappointment if they don't push through to the next step and make it to the NBA Finals. So definitely interesting things to be looking at from a lot of those teams in the Eastern Conference. Guys, before we move on, do you have any other just quick thoughts about the East? Because it does feel like a lot of news lately has been coming out of the West. Any other thoughts at the East before we move on?
I have one note back to the Celtics, just with Jaylen Brown. I mean, what he's been able to do with the Celtics with pretty below expectations and exceeding them, I think he's been pretty disrespected. I mean, he's sixth on the Kia MVP ladder, and where we're getting later in terms of Luka, the fans hating him. I mean, on the MVP race, he's fifth. So, granted, he has better numbers, but I just find it very interesting that a guy who's exceeded expectations the national media not even mentioning him too much as an MVP candidate, and yet he's exceeded expectations. I think that stands out to me. And I think with the Sixers, that's a team that I totally dismiss, and they're performing above expectations along with the Raptors. So props to those teams. It was easily for them just to kind of, mail it in, kind of give in to the negativity, but they actually performed pretty decently above expectations. So shout out to the Raptors and 76ers.
Justin, I'm so glad you gave that well-deserved shout out to Jaylen Brown and re-emphasize that, because you're right. He has been a beast. I know that Luka has pretty offensive stats, but man, if you look at both sides of the ball, if you look at expectations for the Celtics, it's hard for me to put Jaylen Brown below Luka at this point in the season in MVP ratings, and I know that Luka is basically averaging like a 30-point triple double, so that's very hard to ignore. But if you think about how he impacts his team and how the team rallies around him, how he's done as a leader this year too, some of those intangible things as well as the defensive side of the ball, huge nod to Jaylen Brown in my book. Alan, did you have anything else on the East?
Yeah, I want to talk about my favorite team in the East. Not really, the Milwaukee Bucks. So, Giannis is back. Milwaukee's only 3.5 games out of the play-in spot, and yet they cannot win. It is such a poorly constructed team at this point. And I think the writing is on the wall. I'm not sure they're going to make the play-in. I don't expect them to. I think it's really sad that this is how Giannis is going out, and I think Milwaukee Bucks are going to be regretting not trading him a year ago.
Yeah, another just very fascinating situation in a monitor there. I did almost put the Bucks in our rundown, so I'm glad you're giving them a nod there. And it kind of feels like Doc Rivers may be out this offseason, kind of feels like Giannis as well. But I'm sure we will spend more time Giannis getting his own topics on our show in the future here, because that's going to be a huge storyline to follow as we head into the off season. So guys, I wanted to bring a situation to your attention and just kind of ask you, we had a big conversation last time about tanking and, things that were and still are not in a good place in the NBA in general. And we had a situation recently where the Oklahoma City Thunder rested, now some due to injury, but the majority seemed like kind of a load management situation. OKC did not play the top team in the East, the Detroit Pistons, at full strength. And then in the same week span, the starters that were rested and role players, main rotation players that were rested, come back to play against the Denver Nuggets. Now, of course, a Western Conference game matters more to you as a Western Conference team than an Eastern Conference game. But I just have to ask the optics on that and everything around it, and maybe you guys know details that I don't, but does this look like a fair or foul situation, and is this the type of scenario maybe that there should be more action taken against by the league? Justin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, Chandler Parsons, I think he's on the side of calling out the Thunder. He said, quote, former NBA, this is from a report, so former NBA star Chandler Parsons, he has a show on FanDuel, called out the defending champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, were playing very short-handed and was supposed to be a big matchup against the Detroit Pistons last Wednesday. The Thunder and Pistons are the best teams in their respective conferences and are looking forward to a possible preview of the NBA Finals. Says, while Parsons had a point that most, of not all the 6 guys who missed Wednesday's games would have played if it was a playoff game, OKC was well within the parameters of the league load management rule, because the rule only applies to resting stars, not starters. Per definition of terms, a star is a player who made the All-Star team or All-NBA team in the last 3 seasons. So players covered under the rule will be SGA, J-Dub, and Chet Holmgren. So with SGA and Williams nursing injuries, Holmgren was the only star player allowed to rest that game. Meanwhile, Hartenstein and Caruso aren't stars. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's semantics according to this report. I mean, if you're a fan, you're paying tickets. You want to see everybody in there. Whether or not they're an all-star, that's tomato. In terms of your paying customer. That's what it comes down to, is your paying customer, where it comes into buying a streaming subscription or going to the arena. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because, I mean, if you're a fan and if these players play, they get hurt, I mean, what happens? What's the conventional wisdom there? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm old school. I don't like load management. Just have all the guys play the games if they're healthy enough to play. I mean, that's just a bottom line here. Do I think it's some kind of a devastating thing, this individual incident? No. But as an indicative of the modern NBA, yes. And I just think, teams have money to pay fines. I mean, you can fine these teams all you want to. They're billion-dollar corporations. So these punishments, I don't know if they're going to really have any effect in terms of curbing low management.
Alan, your thoughts?
I mean, they will if they start saying, like, instead of a fine, we're going to drop you down one draft pick.
Will the owners agree to that, though?
No. Gosh, no. No.
There you go.
Yeah. No, owners aren't going to agree to anything that cuts into their bottom line. I think it's odd. I think it's interesting that OKC pulled this after they're the ones who allegedly made the complaint about the Utah Jazz doing their thing.
Exactly.
It's just silly at this point. And what were they thinking? I mean, strategically, maybe they're expecting Detroit to be in the finals, and the less experience Detroit has against their star players and their starters, the more surprised they'll be when they run into them in the finals. That surprise could be worth a win or two, and a win or two in the finals is a championship. So I don't know. Maybe they're thinking that way. Maybe they're just, resting their guys when they can. I feel like I'm just zoned out on this on the load management and the players not playing. It's become such a weird thing. On any given night, you've just got people out. I used to understand it when people were recovering from injuries and coming back from like the ACL tear and all that sort of stuff, but it just, yeah. Of all the things to blame Kawhi Leonard for, this is probably the biggest one and I think when they eventually change this and put some more rules in place, it's gonna be called the Kawhi Leonard rule, because this is the exact same BS that he pulled, and it's just exhausting. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and we spent a good amount of time talking about tanking, so you guys can check out our last episode, our last In the Lab episode, if you want to hear more thoughts on that. I don't want to belabor the point. I think that's well said from both of you guys. The situation that comes to mind, I want to say it was maybe like 2013, 2012. The Spurs rested all 5 starters against, I believe it was the Miami Heat, but they were slapped with like a $500,000 fine, if memory serves me correctly. And you're right, to an organization like an NBA team, that's actually not that much money. But I think it was to send a message. And of course, it was David Stern at the helm at that time. And I just wonder, even if making those types of statements, even if the money isn't that big of a deal, even if it's just the headline and calling the team out publicly, like in this situation with OKC, in that situation you mentioned, Alan, with Utah from a couple weeks ago, I wonder if that would have some long-term benefit just to be calling out these teams and these instances when it happens. If nothing else, it's good PR as an organization to your fans. That's like Adam Silver saying, like, hey, we see your disappointment that you bought tickets to this game and people aren't playing, so we are punishing this team. It I think would feel a little bit better as a fan to see that happen. But to my knowledge, no punishment at this point for either the Jazz for that recent incident or OKC.
I mean, Matt, I think the real solution is no more back to backs, which I think we'd all be on board for, and potentially fewer games. The owners will never agree to that, so you've got to figure out how can you extend the season a little bit then, and cut out the back to backs, and then there's no excuse then.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got like runway before the NFL season gets started. So if we're not going to make it less games, maybe you're right about reducing back-to-backs even more so than they've worked on. It's hard to imagine that happening because I don't think they want the finals like landing in July, but maybe something like that, stretching out the season a little bit more, could have benefit. But anyway, we could spend hours continuing to talk about these problems in the league. Just wanted to point out the just interesting case of the practices of the Oklahoma City Thunder in that recent week. So let's move forward to MVP discussion here. All right, so next on our agenda, you guys, it's that time of year where we start looking at MVP race, who's having the most outstanding regular season in the NBA, which is, of course, what this award is supposed to be based around. Justin, you mentioned Jaylen Brown, who is on that MVP ladder. You mentioned Luka Doncic. Alan, I'll throw to you first. How are you feeling looking at this MVP race right now? Is there anyone who's an obvious standout, or just kind of your general thoughts on this race?
Yeah, honestly, this year seems kind of like a ho hum race. I think, and I mean, I think it's probably Shay's to lose, but I also think he's coming really close to that injury, that games played threshold, with the games he's missed. So I don't know. I mean, it it just doesn't. I mean, I think fans of the teams of the contenders are arguing with each other a lot about it. But I think to the rest of the NBA world, I don't think people really care that much. I don't know that anybody's been like, ooh, this year. Um, so I think it'll be kind of an MVP by whoever happens to have the team with the best record and really good stats for that team.
Yeah, it feels like really this year the table was set for Luka if that team was doing better in LA. Because certainly on the offensive side, like we mentioned earlier, the production is there. But it's just kind of hard to buy the Lakers. And you're right, it seems to lack the same sizzle and pop that it's had in previous years. Justin, who do you see as the front runner right now, and how you expect this race to go?
Yeah, I'm with Alan. I think the injuries have a lot to do with it as well. I mean, if we're just dismissing the whole, games played rule, I would put SGA as the front runner. I just think with Jokic in second and the Nuggets, I don't see they're going to catch, the Spurs or the Thunder. I think that's a factor in terms of how your team finishes. And with that, I think, their stats are pretty close in terms of their impact on the team. I think SGA breaks that if they're kind of tied in a metaphorically sense. I think SGA has the edge with the Thunder being at that one, position. But I gotta say, it's a bummer that with Victor Wembanyama, he suffered some injury woes as well. Man, if he was able to stay healthy the entire season, I just think he's the most captivating player in this league. I really do. We haven't seen anything like this guy, in my opinion. Maybe you guys can correct me, but other talents, they're really great in terms of what they can do fundamentally wise. But I think Victor Wembanyama, he has that wow factor that we haven't seen, I think, since Steph Curry. And he's 4 on the Kia MVP ladder. I don't see him. I think he might leapfrog Cade Cunningham, maybe. But I don't see him, surpassing Jokic or SGA in that top spots. But shout out to him because he's going to be someday, he's going to be, number one in that MVP list and, probably the most captivating player in the league.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, with the face of the league discussion and all that being kind of ever present or sort of a point of topic that goes into, this NBA improvement discussion. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Wembanyama may take that title next season. If he plays, close to the full season, he's still not out of contention at this point for the MVP and for those postseason awards. But you're right, like all those top candidates have had some injury time. They've all been out for a stretch. Of course, Jokic, like with the knee hyperextension, that I think he can only miss like 3 more games or something like that before he's out of contention. So that kind of puts a damper on being the strongest MVP candidate that you could possibly be, because I would really argue I'd probably still give the MVP award to Jokic like I would have done last season as well. The man in my book would just be stacking MVP awards for the past several years, which he already has done with the ones that he legitimately won. But it feels like if you gave it to Jokic this year, you're kind of just saying like, well, Jokic's stats are outstanding. He's a big part of what Denver has done and why they're in contention. And he has that history of being a multiple MVP award winner. So let's give him another one. He's kind of a safe one to go to in a year where it's a little bit just kind of blah in terms of the conversation so far anyway, with certainly some season left to go here.
Yeah, I wanted to bring just piggyback on something Justin said about Wemby. It was the face of the league. I know we've talked about it a lot. My concern with Wemby being the face of the league is that kids can't really emulate him. They can't, do a turnaround jumper like Kobe or shoot threes like Steph or do the midi pull up like Michael. I don't know that there's ever really been a big man who's been the face of the league, and I think it's because you can't. The young folk, the kids I see playing basketball out in the park and on the street here, they're still looking up to Steph. The Steph is still their guy, because that's a guy whose skills they can go actually out and try to emulate. Wemby, while a joy to watch, is so uniquely alien in the way that he moves and his body and his skill type that I just don't know that he'll ever be the face of the league. I don't know. That's just my thought. I don't know, Justin, if you wanted to counter me on that or add anything.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. I think with Wemby, he's in a new kind of superstar environment in 2026 where it's not so much athletes fans trying to emulate what he can do on the court. It's what he can bring outside of the court as well with his skills, like him playing chess in Central Park, right? That went viral. He's playing chess. Everybody comes. It just blows up. He has a great personality. He's incredibly relatable, and I think that's going to be a factor as well. Even with the All-Star game, he took the lead in that in terms of playing aggressive. So he clearly has a outgoing personality compared to somebody who I really like, Jaylen Brown, who's more reserved, quiet. I don't know if you guys heard about his whole event during All-Star Weekend being broken up by the cops. He's incredibly calm and stoic in that situation. I would not be if I was in that environment, but he's quiet, and I think in terms of being the face of the league, you need to have an external personality, and that's something that Victor Wembanyama has. And I agree with you, Al. In terms of stuff on the court, he's one of one. I would say in a kind of a different fashion, he kind of offers something like a Shaq just in terms of a unique personality. But honestly, Alan, you're right. Even with Giannis, he has a great personality. How many times has he been on Monday Night Raw? I mean, look at the guy. I mean, his stuff's gone viral in terms of the starting lineups, him, beating up mascots, and still, like, in terms of the most popular sport athletes in America, he's not on that list. And I think also that hurts when Victor Wembanyama is, he's from France. I mean, that's another thing. Unfortunately, in this country, we take a look at the track record of athletes. Typically, Americans are usually attracted to American-born athletes. That's usually how it is. So, but I do think just with the way this guy, I don't know, he's just an anomaly in so many ways that I think that it's possible to him to break through that. But there are some hurdles. I agree with you there.
Here's the thing I'll say, maybe in the argument for face of the league and Wemby, kind of more what I mean, because you're on the money, Alan. Like, you can't imitate being 7'5" or whatever height we're deciding that Victor Wembanyama is at this point. You can't emulate that, so you're on the money. Like, this isn't a situation like Steph Curry where kids will be pretending that they're him necessarily. I mean, unless they block someone's shot, they'll probably call out a reference to him, but it's not really. It's more that they blocked a shot and not that they're towering over their opposition. But the point being is, I think Wemby may be a respected leader in the NBA already among his peers. And Justin, you brought it up, like that point about Wemby saying in the All-Star game, hey, y'all better be ready because I'm coming. I'm playing. I'm competing in this game. Y'all can join me or y'all can get smoked by me. That's how it's going to be. Now, we know the World didn't win the game, but early in the very first matchup that we saw, he kind of set the tone, and players did follow to an extent. Of course, most of the players participating being in the league for several years longer than Wemby had been in the league at that point. So I think there's an interesting maybe zag you can look at where fans like such as myself, certainly at times being a little bit restless with the attitude around things like the All-Star game and the level of effort that we're seeing. Wemby is sort of, I think, representing a zag in the opposite direction, that we're going to have competitive spirit again. We're going to have level of effort, and that may be where he gets like a groundswell of support. But you guys bring up a lot of points that could certainly counter that, like the fact that he is a foreign player, and we have yet to see like a face of the league type of player who is, foreign born, and as well as, if children aren't emulating him, if people growing up playing in AAU and otherwise aren't emulating him, does that lead to face of the league status? So I guess to sort of put a bow on it, as always, time will tell. We'll have to see how Wemby does. Maybe if he can climb the MVP ladder a little bit more this season, or be a leader on it next season if he's available through most of the season. Any other thoughts on the MVP topic or otherwise before we move to next on our agenda? All right, we'll go ahead and get into it. So you guys have seen this. I teased it earlier, and Justin, you mentioned it. It seems like it's with the Los Angeles Lakers. It's always some drama, right? It was drama with Kobe and Shaq. Drama as long ago as you can think. Of drama on the Showtime Lakers for a stretch there. There's always stuff going on in LA. There's always hyper focus on the Lakers because they're one of the most important basketball franchises, arguably the most important. And so this year we have no shortage of drama, maybe one of the more dramatic seasons in LA with how transition of power has gone from LeBron to Luka. And, really at the beginning of the season, the narrative was around LeBron James taking off time in the start of season to sort of maybe punish the Lakers or flex against the Lakers, kind of see what his options were since he's losing footing as the priority player of that franchise, which now rightfully is transferring over to Luka. Well, it seems like lately despite Luka having a pretty tight relationship with JJ Redick, there's always been questions about how he was going to fit with LeBron. But I think no questions about him being the future and having the keys for this franchise. I mean, that's why you bring him in, certainly. Recently, there was a little spat you guys probably saw between Luka and Redick on the sidelines. Maybe that's just something that happens, among competitive people. Both of those gentlemen, of course, being pretty heavily competitive guys. But this Luka era started with, Luka holding up his jersey in LA, that presser, and you could see his heart was kind of broken. He was kind of shocked from being traded from the Mavericks and everything he had built there. And now we're in this holding pattern, waiting for LeBron's next move and kind of for this situation to settle for Luka. So I guess I just want to know, from what you guys are seeing, does it seem like Luka is unhappy, and does it seem like Lakers fans are unhappy with Luka? And if so, how are you feeling about that? Alan, I'll lead off with you.
I'll just say 3 words. Nico was right.
Oh no!
I think the thing you can fault him on is the return that he got, but I think this Luka is what you get. I just don't see it as a thing for him.
Really? So you're ready?
I think that this is what the Lakers are going to be. Unless they can build a really strong team around him that makes up for all his deficiencies, this is the Lakers' future, and it's not really that bright.
So deficiencies being like the defensive side of the ball, which certainly there's big lack of effort top down on that roster, but then also like attitude and chemistry that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Justin, your thoughts?
Yeah. I wouldn't go that far, but Allen has a lot of great points. I mean, let's keep it real. They're 36 and 24. You take a look at the teams ahead of them, right? Denver with a lot of injuries. The Timberwolves are very inconsistent. You have the Rockets. They've been pretty solid, but still, you take a look between these 3 teams, even the Suns, it's around like 4 games in between, these 5 teams. And I think the Spurs and the Thunder are clearly the 2 top teams within the West. So you have 2 generational talents on your team, plus Austin Reeves, who has grown over time and has proven to be, all in on this squad. Why are they struggling this much? Why is there a lack of effort? I mean, I don't know. I think it's bad. I think it reflects badly on Luka. I think we talked about it reflects badly on LeBron. I don't think this is really J.J. Redick's fault. I think it's going to be very interesting when J.J. Redick is fired, because he will be fired, just because he's going to be the scapegoat. Like, he's going to be fired. That's just the way it's going to go. He will be gone. And I think he's going to be on a great team. Honestly, I think he's going to. I have a wild prediction, hot take. I think he's going to be coach of the year somewhere else. I just think on this team, what can you do with, like what Alan said, a guy with a track record that, it is what it is. He, doesn't want to try too much on the defensive end of things. I mean, when we see a player for so many years show the same behavior, it is what it is. It's not going to change. And I think we saw this with, Zion Williamson, right? He was on NBA Today talking about his injuries, his foot. And, it leaked, and I know he's an unpopular figure these days, but with Stephen A. Smith, I mean, he still is an NBA insider despite how you feel about him politically. I mean, a dude has connections with any NBA. He pointed out several times in terms of Zion having issues with his weight. And we were waiting here to see, hey, is Zion going to become a phenomenal player? And it hasn't happened because of just issues off the court. And the same thing with Luka. I think we're magically waiting to see he's going to improve on a defensive end and become, this phenomenal player. And it's not going to happen. Compared to a Jokic, in which we saw that maturation process. There's never been a question of his commitment to the game. So I think to Alan's point, I think there's a lot of validity to it. I'm a little bit hopeful in terms of maybe he can improve, but honestly, I can't make a counter argument in terms of miraculously, you know, he's all of a sudden going to make huge improvements. I mean, the only thing he has improved is going back to the weight issue. I think he has looked pretty decent, pretty well in terms of his conditioning. He's coming into the season, but still, on a defensive end, that's where you're going to make your money, and he has been deficient in that for sure.
Well, I didn't prepare to come to bat for Luka today, but I guess I'm coming to bat for Luka, and here's what I'll say: next season is going to be, to this point, I think the most important season of Luka's career, because we're going to see LeBron James off this roster, and we're going to see pretty clearly, like, was this situation sort of LeBron James kind of poisoning the well, so to speak, in terms of morale, chemistry, all those things, effort, and are people looking at LeBron and feeling like they're not going to contribute because they see LeBron not contributing, or does this go another way? Because next year is really the first year where Luka fully has the keys to the franchise, and I'm wondering if he gets his passion for basketball back when he gets to kind of be full on the man.
We'll see.
So that's kind of what I would say the hope is for Luka. It could also be maybe he really just does not like it in LA, and that trade away from Dallas and a team that he built for years and got to the finals. There was like, a hero's journey there to bring his Mavericks title to that franchise. I mean, maybe it did break his spirit, because he does seem to play with a lot less passion this season compared to all the years past that we've seen him. And so you wonder if he kind of gets his mojo back, so to speak. He's never been like an elite level defender. He has the size that he should be able to be at least a semi-effective defender if he's putting the effort in. But we know, I think it's pretty clear he saves effort to put all that energy onto the offensive side of the ball. So I guess, long story short, I'm just going to take a beat, take a breather, and I'm going to see how this looks next year, given the body of work that we've seen of Luka's. And I guess I still just have some goodwill for the guy, with the fact that he brought that 2024 Mavericks team to the finals when they probably didn't belong there, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I like his game. I just think in terms of motivation as a superstar, again, we're talking like the higher echelon of players in the league. I mean, we're not talking about just, him being worthy of being in the league itself. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But when we're talking about, being a top elite player, there's some huge liabilities there. And I don't know. I just think you're very optimistic, Matt. I'm going to be more cynical and more negative. And I just think, if LeBron does leave and Luka has taken over this team, I just think not only, just him meshing with LeBron, it being this weird, but also him, like Alan said, being traded from a home that he really liked into a new environment. I don't know if he's going to get his mojo back. That's just me. Man, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that's not. I hope he's a killer and he's awesome, and LeBron leaving is the best thing for him. I really do. I really do hope that happens. But I'm not optimistic that's going to be the case.
Yeah, definitely fair. I think so. In the grand scheme of things, and maybe we can't agree on this, but I think you probably say, like, at Luka's floor as a career, like, you're getting James Harden that, like, led a team to the finals. So there's like a little hurdle over James Harden potentially. Now, granted, James Harden has played longer. He's put up more stats to this point, but that's kind of like your floor that you're looking at with Luka. And now we're in that spot where he's got to make his mark. He's got to start winning titles if he wants to be, I think, as great as everyone thought he would be when he was drafted, and then when he was early on already making all NBA teams. He certainly has not lived up to that point yet. Alan, I got to go back to you and get some more thoughts on Luka here and your Nico was right statement.
Yeah, he complains too much to the refs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing that's bringing down Alper and Şengün.
100% agree with that.
Whine about the refs way too much. He is a defensive cone. Justin, I agree with you. He looks to be in the best shape of his life, but it's not translating necessarily to wins. That's a team construction issue. I think you put the right people around him, the team can be successful. I absolutely understand why Nico and Dumont felt like they needed to move on from him. I think there's some limitations to the way he plays and the gravity that he brings, and the usage that he requires. That I think you're right. He is kind of like a Harden in a lot of ways.
It's the natural comparison, right? Because that high usage rate, like you're always having the ball. Yeah, and it's like Harden is finding success in his late career because he's able to play kind of not be the guy. I mean, the Cleveland, his usage has dipped to the lowest it's ever been in a long time. So I think that's kind of where we're standing at with Luka until he'll be successful when he has his next team or his next two teams somewhere where he's like the second or third guy. Alan, I got to ask, what's your perspective on, the Luka LeBron clash and like kind of outlook, like what I was alluding to, if LeBron is off of this roster, do you think Luka gets some of his passion or ownership or pride in his own play back?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think LeBron's causing those issues for Luka. I think it goes back to the trade itself that's kind of robbed him of some of that passion. I think he came out this year wanting to prove everybody wrong, and it hasn't gone to plan, so I think it's spiraled a little for him. He's still putting up the stats, it's just not winning. LeBron really doesn't like that kind of player. He's never been a fan of Harden's. And I don't think he likes that style of play. He likes the people around him to play hard defense, and even though he's not exactly the great defender nowadays that maybe he was earlier in his career, he still has those expectations of playing hard like that. And so I think players who kind of take plays off here and there don't sit well with him. So I think ultimately, will the team be better next year without LeBron? Depends on what they build around Luka.
Interesting. Yeah, all great points, and it's definitely something worth considering. Like, if Luka stays in Dallas and wins them a championship, maybe 2 championships, maybe more than that, who knows? He's beloved in Dallas forever, and I think there was like an adoration for him in Dallas because it was kind of like you had Dirk there, like passing the torch off to him and everything. I just don't know that he'll ever get to that point in LA. Like unless he wins, I don't know, like 3 titles, maybe he'll be beloved in LA if he can put up like that kind of a result. Even then, it's just a little bit different than the situation he's been thrust into here. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And so with all that said, guys, any other thoughts on Luka before we move on to our final topic? All right, let's get into this KD business here. I won't even say all that much. You guys, I'm sure, have heard about the KD news. We're pretty late on it. because it was kind of just breaking the last time we had it in the lab, and we didn't have too many details on it at this point. It does greatly impact the Rockets. Essentially, KD is still doing his burner business on Twitter. And Justin, KD's someone we've talked about a lot on the show. He's been, one of those big three players that kind of defined the 2010s decade, certainly. But what are your thoughts on, like, kind of what was your initial reaction hearing the news about KD, and what are your thoughts on it right now?
Yeah, I have mixed emotions about it, just because part of me is like, is he really that stupid to do this still? I mean, I think he's a smart guy, I really do think. But at the same time, he has a track record of doing it, so you have no credibility. Like, what is everybody supposed to think? We've done this before. Like, I don't know. I just think for the player of his caliber to be involved in this, it's pretty, I don't know, pretty distasteful. And for somebody who's a student of the game, maybe if you heard him on Bill Simmons, this guy knows a lot just about the inner workings of the NBA. He loves this league, that's for sure. And you just do this, I just think it's pretty petty. And if you're going to talk trash, just talk trash in a text message. Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, or on Signal. Like, something where you can't track, who's doing the conversations. I don't know why you do it on Twitter. That's what's so baffling about this guy. Like, he knows about technology. He's a co-founder of Boardroom. Like, this is not a non-tech savvy person here. Like, he's pretty smart. So why he's engaged in this is beyond me. And yeah, this is another thing that's going to affect his legacy, and I think it affects just this era of superstar. I mean, it's just been such a weird era. I think after Jordan, I think even after Kobe, it again, like the the stars that we really have a lot of affinity for. I mean, I think Dwayne Wade pretty much made it through his career unscathed. Melo, I would say, you take a look at Denver and then New York, but never in terms of like being this petty. I don't know. I think when their careers are over, you have a lot of warm feeling towards those guys. But as we kind of head towards, like you were saying, like the Harden era, Durant, just like a lot of these guys, even like getting later, with Luka, it's weird. Like, it's just, I don't know. We're in a new paradigm of just like athletes and with social media, and I think it's kind of poisoned before in terms of their behavior. I think, if we were to pick, this compared to like them involved in any kind of criminal behavior, I'll take this every day of the week. But at the same time, it doesn't help my feelings towards these guys. So in heart of hearts, do I feel like he's really behind these accounts? Honestly, I don't. But do I have any credibility if I'm going to argue with you? Not really. I mean, I get to shrug my shoulders to say, yeah, you're right. So, and that's unfortunate to say that about a player of Kevin Durant's caliber.
Yeah, and there are interesting. I mean, if it's not KD on these accounts, and yeah, I guess I should say it's alleged KD burners. Someone really did their homework if it's not KD, because a lot of the messages look very similar to KD's style of writing. There's even like certain terms in there, a lot of them that I can't say on here, that or I choose not to say on here, that that reflect on messages KD has written in the past. So either someone really did their homework, or it's KD serving in those burners. I think it's interesting, right? Because it's like that sort of reflection of society that you mentioned. Like, a lot of people struggle with social media addiction. I know I've been working to try to get my own screen time down and those kinds of things. A lot of people struggle with that, and it turns out even some of the most elite members of society, at least in terms of earnings and things like that, have some of those same struggles too. I think back to the clips going around, like KD being in the layup warm-up line for the All-Star game, and he's like checking his cell phone, or when he's walking through the hallway to go out on the court, he's got his cell phone in his pocket, he's pulling it out, he's checking his cell phone. There does seem to be, people feel differently about that. I mean, maybe some people, maybe people younger than me, maybe not, maybe age has nothing to do with it, might not think it's weird that an NBA player would have their cell phone in their pocket in a layup line for a game. To me, that seems baffling. Like to think of a professional athlete having their phone that close to them, like while they're, getting ready to compete at the highest level. Granted, I was alluding to All-Star game, which has been a little more loose in years past. I don't know. It just seems interesting. The other point that I wanted to mention too here, Justin, that was kind of my overall thought and relating more to KD's legacy, I guess it's just disappointment as a fan of like what KD can do on the court, how talented he is. It seems like this is an area, not to judge the guy, but when we look at his narrative over time, like how things ended up in OKC, how things ended up in Golden State, allegations at least of burner accounts in the past, it's just a situation where it seems like if these allegations are true, and if these are, again, KD burners, there's just been kind of no growth there. And I would liken it to like a movie that you really like, but maybe it doesn't have the greatest ending. Maybe it doesn't like stick the landing in terms of the ending, and you're just kind of a little bit disappointed with the end result because of all that. Now, granted, KD is an awesome player. Everyone respects his skill, his shooting accuracy at his size, all those incredible things he can do. I'm not trying to take anything away from him in terms of that. But if these allegations are true, and maybe even if they're not true, you have to imagine this really hurts Houston's chances moving forward. I mean, I know he dropped like 35 points the following game after this news all broke. But in terms of building like tightness and that chemistry that you need on a team, I mean, yeah, you don't have to love each other, but you probably need to respect each other at least to win a title. And I don't know if this puts Houston out of that realm of possibility at this point.
Wouldn't he, if and I'm going against my own argument here, but if he was really adamant this is not him, wouldn't it be like, hey, my lawyers are getting involved, you're slandering my name? Like, this is slandering his reputation. And just his quote here of, like, when asked about this, he's like, I know you got to ask these questions, but I'm not here to get in Twitter nonsense. But I know you have to ask. My teammates know what it is. We've been locked in the whole season. Yeah, I got a great practice today. Looking forward to the road trip. When you have some lawyers be, hey, I'm lawyering up. I'm suing whoever released. They're slandering my name. Or, if you didn't really do this, somebody hacked into his phone. So to me, it's just your account got hacked. So to me, it's like, hey, either way, I'm taking legal action. I mean, you're disrupting his life. Now
he's stealing his identity.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, if he's the origin of it, yeah, he's stupid enough to do it. He should be blamed. But however, like, I don't see the outrage. That's what's kind of puzzling to me. It's like your reputation's being smashed here, and you're just kind of standing there taking it. Like, I don't know. This seems peculiar why you would do that. But
yeah, and maybe at least like to your current teammates, I don't know. Maybe this, hopefully, if you're a Rockets fan, you probably hope like KD's had some one-on-one conversations. I mean, certainly they've interacted since then, but like with Şengün, who is largely mentioned in these alleged tweets from KD, you got to do some damage control there. And I just don't know that KD is that person that's going to be like that up front with his team members and all that stuff to make this all kind of go away and be sort of bridge under the water. Maybe that has happened. Maybe it hasn't, and Houston has enough talent that it's not going to be a factor. I don't know. It seems to me though like maybe KD is just shrugging his shoulders and it is what it is, guys. Let's roll the ball out and let's play hoops.
It's just either way, it's just weird. Like, and he started it with his own burner accounts. I mean, you started doing this, so yeah, you kind of dug this hole, and this is going to stick with you forever. I mean, it's just we all know about social media being a cesspool, and you played into it. So unless you just delete your account 100%, which he honestly should do, you just like you're saying, man, you should just get off social media. But you know, I just don't understand his reaction to this. It's pretty puzzling. If I'm a teammate of his, I'm pretty puzzled by his response.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this day and age, you can't really just wave it off and say like Twitter nonsense, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You know, to quote KD, because it matters deeply to these players. I mean, we hear like on the serious side, you know, players have talked about like mental health issues and things like that from social media and that impact. And that certainly, again, that's kind of a mirror of society because a lot of people get impacted that way too with social media, et cetera. You all know the story on that. But I don't really buy it even from multimillionaire superstar players that, you know, this is quote unquote Twitter nonsense because they are reacting to these things, even if it's not directly on Twitter. There is definitely like note being taken. I mean, really, at least since the mid 2010s, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, it really has impacted professional athletes in a big way. Not just in the NBA either, but with NBA superstardom being, you know, one of the highest superstardom statuses you can achieve in professional sports. I do think you see it magnified for NBA superstars.
Yeah, and this has been a big issue in the W, too. You know, and they reported it to the league, and, you know, they have to provide different services in terms of the abuse they have experienced on social media. So if I'm Kevin Durant and, you know, somebody is following me, I'm reading this report on Yahoo Sports, and it doesn't even say, I mean, just read it on here. It says the account in question is currently under the name GetHire77 on X. I mean, the screenshots happened leaked with a user thrashing Houston Rockets players Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun. Allegedly, the man behind the username is Durant, with no proof. Like, allegedly from what? Like, who found this out? Like, in a text, Durant talks to someone else about how Sengun is a franchise player, yet he can't shoot or defend. They also say that they can't trust Smith Jr. to make a shot or get a stop. That's not all. Then you say Lake Show Jr., this is another account. I'm just talking, and like you said, we can't reveal what's on here. You can look it up yourself if you really want to. But, like, what kind of proof do we have? Like, I don't understand. What kind of evidence do we have this is really Kevin Durant's burner account? For what? Like, I mean, I guess it sounds like him. I don't know. But do we have any evidence of, like, this is really him? But at the same time, his response is not really helping things in terms of this is really him or not. So, I don't know. If I were him, I'd take legal action. I don't know why he's just letting his reputation getting smashed all over the media and social media. I don't know. It's pretty crazy to me. But
yeah, well, and like you said, I mean, his response to being questioned to that, it did feel like, in a way, an admission of guilt.
Yeah, totally.
Because it wasn't like, I can't believe you guys think that was me, like, you know, or like a hard no on all that rather than I'm not going to talk about Twitter nonsense.
Yeah.
Because that could be like, hey, this is nonsense that you think it's my burner, but you're not saying it directly enough that it's perceived that way.
Yeah, I don't know why you say, hey, this is ridiculous. This is not me. And my lawyers or whatever social media sleuths are looking into this. I don't see how that hard it is to say that.
And that definitely points to, you know, making you highly suspicious that it is him.
Agreed.
And it is
Agreed.
legit, you know, what the sources are leaking, I guess. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate because this Houston situation seemed like such a good endpoint for Kevin Durant, and things can change. And as the saying goes, like winning solves all problems or almost all problems. It kind of just feels to me like, okay, KD's still doing the burner thing, still like not being the greatest teammate here. And that's unfortunate because he's had a lot of stops along the way where he's had certainly the opportunity to put his stamp on things. And this Houston one feels kind of already like a little bit of a blown opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the narrative of like, now he's the veteran. He's maybe not the leader of the team, but he can be that positive influence veteran and that clutch scoring kind of guy to get Houston over the hump. I mean, on the court, maybe he still very well is that player, but it puts a damper on, what may be his last stop as an NBA player.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. Yeah.
Well, with that, Justin, and shout out to Alan. He had to drop off. I certainly would like his thoughts on this Kevin Durant situation as well, but he had to head out. So we're going to go ahead and wrap for the night. Appreciate you all listening. If you made it to this point, remember to like, share, subscribe. Check out our interviews that are always posting multiple times a week. And Justin, any last words before we sign out?
Yeah, you mentioned the Bucks earlier. We got an interview with Camille Davis, host on Locked On Bucks, covering the Milwaukee Bucks. So we delve in all of that. The trade roller coaster with Giannis. We delve into some wrestling talk at the end because he hosts a pro wrestling podcast. So we delve into pro wrestling talk regards to WrestleMania. Also, we have an interview with Justin Martinez of the Oklahomian, discussing the Thunder, just in terms of their off-the-court chemistry, just different things that are intangibles that makes them one of the best teams in the league. And we have an interview with the director of Soul Power, the history of the ABA, the American Basketball Association, on Prime Video, a great documentary. It's just awesome. I think you got Prime Video. Just please watch that documentary because it really is the precursor to the NBA and everything that you see. I know, documentaries are, there's a bunch of them these days. Sports documentaries are super popular. But this one, if you don't watch a lot of sports documentaries, this one's worth your time.
Awesome. Well said, Justin. For Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. We will see you next time on In the Lab with Hoopsology. Until then, take care and peace out.
See you later.